3 years into our marriage, I discovered a portrait of a woman tucked away in my husband's military strategy books. Beneath it was inscribed, "My beloved Jiaojiao." And he had a mistress, her name was Shen Jiao. In the 3rd year after marrying Gu Changji, a young lady named Shen arrived in the capital. She was Shen Jiao, and true to her name, she blazed like the sun, fiery and extraordinary. From then on, she became the extraordinary woman Gu Changji constantly praised. They admired lanterns together, rode lakes, discussed the heavens and earth, drew bows for hunting, and galloped across fields playing Qiu. Just when everyone was waiting to see me humiliated, he fought over Shen Jiao with another man. He beat the man in the street, causing a scene that reached the 5-city military command. News reached the mansion, and in my grief, I shattered my most cherished glass lamp. The sharp shards drew blood instantly, the wound deep enough to expose bone. That very night, Gu Changji brought her back to the estate. Shen Jiao peeked out from behind him, offering me a smile as sweet as a blooming hibiscus. "Is this the general's wife? So beautiful?" "Gu, you lied to me," calling her plain as a willow. She pouted, tugging at Gu Changji's sleeve with a pout, her eyes brimming with dependence. Gu Changji gazed at her tenderly, murmuring softly, "Nonsense. I value inner beauty above all else." Listening nearby, my heart stung. Suddenly, I recalled the night we were married. Gu Changji had embraced me passionately, tracing the contours of my brows and eyes with his fingers. I teased him for being so frivolous. He pressed closer, whispering words so intimate they made me blush. "My Yi is beautiful in every way. What if I am captivated by her beauty?" The red candles flickered as his lips met mine, my heart pounding like a drum. Yet now, in his words, I had become nothing more than a willow tree for others to mock. "Sister, you look pale. Are you feeling unwell?" Shen Jiao asked knowingly, a smug smile curling her lips. But she had picked the wrong person to provoke. Spoiled since childhood, I never learned to swallow my pride. My face turned cold as I turned to Gu Changji. "Are you taking a concubine? Husband?" No one expected this sudden question, not even Gu Changji. He glanced instinctively at Shen Jiao before replying in a deep voice, "It's not what you think." Satisfied with his explanation, I nodded and signaled to Fuzhu beside me. She immediately understood, rolled up her sleeves, and began shoving Shen Jiao toward the manor gates. Shen Jiao likely never imagined she'd be humiliated like this. "Gu Changji, did you beg me to return to the manor just to humiliate me?" Fuzhu cut in sharply, scolding, "The princess holds noble status. Not only do you lack the slightest courtesy, but you dare to presume sisterhood with her." No sooner had she spoken than Fuzhu received a solid slap from Gu Changji. He shielded Shen Jiao behind him, glaring at me with fury. The maidservant by the princess's side certainly has the nerve. Today, I shall see who truly rules this household. Though Fuzhu bore the blow, it struck me square in the face. Standing there, my heart plummeted into an ice cellar. My mother was the eldest princess. The current emperor was my own uncle. Though my father passed away early, I was raised as the apple of everyone's eye. From childhood, my mother told me that if I wished, I could be granted the title of princess at any time. But for Gu Changji's career, I refused. News of his street brawl had long reached me through mother's confidants. At the 5 cities military command, clenching my palm hard, I said coldly, "Today you fought in public over her. If you bring her into the mansion again, the court officials will report you tomorrow. Think carefully. If this reached the imperial court, it would be a blow to the royal family's reputation." I knew he understood the stakes. Gu Changji finally relented. After sending Shen Jiao away, Fuzhu dressed my wounds. The raw flesh gaped, yet Gu Changji frowned as if blind to it. He soothed me with his usual soft voice, though his eyes held no warmth. "Miss Shen is alone, with no family or friends. I only wish to help her. With her bold nature, she naturally offends people easily. Bear with her." i.e., she poses no threat to you. You are the rightful wife of the general's mansion, my only spouse. He struck first with a blow, then offered a sweet date. He thought this would make me willingly obey him, speak a few kind words on his behalf. I wanted to laugh, but the wound throbbed excruciatingly. In the past, even a pebble rolling onto my shoe would make him wince with concern, afraid it might hurt me. Gu Change knew I dreaded pain most of all, restraining himself even in moments of passion. Now, with this horrifying wound gouged by glass, he looks right through me. In the end, Gu Changji left anyway. He couldn't leave Shen Jiao alone, rushing off to find her a place to stay himself. Before departing, he tossed back, "I'll be back soon." From start to finish, he never once asked, "Does it hurt?" Yet he once swore I was his one true love. So it turns out, his so-called love lasted only 3 short years. I stared fixedly at his retreating figure, until he vanished completely into the night, until I could no longer see him. I blinked my stinging eyes, and a tear fell onto my hand, slowly seeping into the wound, burning and stinging. Fuzhu, my hand hurts, but my heart hurt even more. It felt like he suddenly stopped loving me. Gu Changji promised he'd return soon. 5 whole days passed. Though he lingered in the embrace of another, he treated me as kindly as ever. Pastries from the eastern city arrived fresh from the oven, always appearing on my table first. When Lingnan's likes ripened, I awoke each day to the freshest fruit. But I knew these things weren't just for me. Shen Jiao received even better ones. I locked myself in my room day after day, refusing to listen to the rumors. I believed that by doing so, Gu Changji and I could remain like a loving couple, growing old together. Mother sensed my anguish and specially sent to night pearls, each the size of a grape. She wanted me to know that to her, I was the jewel in her palm, never to suffer any injustice. Fuzhu and I buried our heads in the quilt, letting the pearls glow cascade over the bed, laughing like children. Fuzhu was always full of mischievous ideas. "Princess, why not embroider these night pearls onto the silk of your shoes? Then you could see your way clearly at night." We both fell silent. Because of my frail constitution, my night vision was poor. Gu Changji had craftsmen place oil paper lanterns at intervals along the garden pots to guide my way. He must have forgotten. In the past, whenever he returned from the barracks, he would always come to sit in my courtyard first. Fearing he too might struggle to see, I would always have the lanterns lit. The dragon-like flames of the candles linked together, illuminating a patch of sky. The moment he appeared, I could easily spot him and throw myself into his arms. How ridiculous a martial artist like him couldn't possibly struggle with nighttime pots. It was just me deceiving myself. Now, Gu Changer rarely comes anymore, spending most nights in his study. The lanterns have remained unlit for ages. I feel like a prisoner trapped in a dark cage. In this moment, I yearn to escape this place more than ever. When the night pearl silk shoes were finally finished, I went to the study to find Gu Changji. In the past, whenever I acquired something rare, I'd always share it with him, just to hear him say, "If my lady is happy, then I am happy." That single phrase could brighten my entire day. Alas, fate was unkind. When I reached the study, Gu Changji was nowhere to be found. Only a military strategy book with curled edges lay on the desk, clearly a frequent companion. I picked it up casually and began flipping through the pages. A small portrait unexpectedly slipped out. I caught it in a fluster, and a familiar, graceful figure abruptly came into view. It was Shen Jiao. My gaze was drawn to the small characters beneath. Even as every fiber of my being screamed not to look, I numbly raised it to my eyes. Beneath the powerful signature of Kang Qiang, it read, "To my beloved Jiaojiao." The flowing strokes seemed to carry the unbridled passion of the one who penned them. In that moment, my chest went numb, and I nearly lost my footing. Then a voice announced from outside. It was the attendant who followed Gu Changji. He came to deliver a message. The northern barbarians had been active lately, and war could break out at any moment. Gu Changji was swamped with duties, living and eating at the military camp, with no time to return home. The general specifically sent me to tell you not to worry, madam. I nodded, fighting off dizziness to reply. The general left in haste. I'll gather some personal garments to send him. Before departing, I sent word to the princess's residence, requesting mother to arrange the divorce. Once outside the general's residence, the carriage rolled onto the main road. I ordered the driver to turn back to Yonglin Alley. That was where Shen Jiao lived. The carriage stopped near a private residence. Through the curtain, I saw the servant who delivered the message hurry inside. Soon after, Gu Changer emerged. Behind him followed Shen Jiao, her hair disheveled and hairpin askew. In that instant, a thunderous roar filled my ears. I watched Gu Changji plant a satisfied kiss on the corner of her lips. Before bidding her a reluctant farewell, my wounds began to ache anew. So it wasn't busy official duties keeping him from me. It was someone more important, someone he longed to see more, that kept him from me. My heart felt like it had been torn open, a gaping hole through which a bone-chilling wind howled. By the time I stumbled back to the mansion, lost and disoriented, night had deepened. Outside, crowds thronged the street, torches illuminating half the thoroughfare. Gu Changji froze slightly upon seeing me. Where have you been? He strode over, pulling me into his arms with possessive force. The cloying scent of lychee invaded my senses. Holding my breath, I shoved him away and marched straight toward the courtyard without looking back. Gu Changji must have sensed something was wrong. He glanced down and his expression changed drastically. Without a word, he grabbed my wrist, forcing me to stop. Your foot! How could you be so careless? Seeing you like this breaks my heart. Following his gaze, I saw a winding trail of blood behind me. My silk shoes were already soaked through with blood. The night pearl atop them, encrusted with dust, had long lost its luster just like my withered heart. But I no longer felt the pain. Clearly, he and I had shared sweet moments. So when did it all change? I refused to play this charade any longer. I refused to be a fool deceiving myself. I yanked my hand back, stiffly pulling the military treatise from my bosom and thrusting it toward him. Then, in a quiet voice, I said, Gu Changji, let us divorce. From this day forward, we owe each other nothing. Having spoken my piece, I shoved the book into his chest. Gu Changji's fingers were long and slender, with distinct knuckles, my favorite feature about him. But now, scenes from that day flashed before my eyes. These very hands had once cradled Shen Jiao's face, calling her Jiaojiao over and over. My heart turned bitter, yet I watched him lower his gaze to examine the book. His expression impenetrable. After a long moment, Gu Changji finally managed a faint smile. Stop sulking. I'm back now, aren't I? If there's something you need to discuss, let's go inside. I won't agree to a divorce. His tone carried a hint of appeasement. I'd walked all the way back from Yonglin Alley, my feet bleeding, utterly exhausted. But what I never could have imagined was that even now, he was still concerned about his reputation, and still believed I was being unreasonable. I felt only bitter laughter and profound sadness. The man I once loved with all my heart now seemed so utterly foreign. I couldn't help but snort, then numbly reminded him, Gu Changji, I saw everything. Facing me now must feel exhausting, doesn't it? His expression was inexplicable, his eyes seemingly filled with a tangled thread of pain. An unnamed rage instantly surged from my heart, burning through my limbs and bones. In that moment, I desperately wanted to tear away his mask and see how long he intended to keep up this charade. But my upbringing restrained me, and I merely raised my hand in defiance, flinging the military strategy book to the ground. As the pages fluttered, Shen Jiao's small portrait fell defenselessly to the floor. The silence was so thick you could hear a pin drop. The wound on my hand reopened, spilling beads of blood. This time, he finally saw my injury, his expression changing drastically. Quickly, fetch the imperial physician. With that, he reached out and grabbed my hand. Shen Jiao's portrait, however, he didn't glance at once. I couldn't be bothered to guess his intentions. "You're hurting me," I murmured softly. His face tightened, his lips trembling, but he said nothing and released my hand. Fuzhu supported me as we headed toward the inner chambers. The book was a good one, but the man reading it, I no longer wanted him. This commotion must have reminded Gu Changji of our happier times. He deliberately leaned close to me, hoping to soften my heart, a tactic he often employed. I held my breath and slapped his hand away. "Aren't you supposed to be with that woman from Yonglin Alley today? If she enjoys snatching up my leftovers, she can have them all." He frowned at my harsh words and tried to reason with me. You shouldn't harbor such hostility toward her. You come from a noble background, naturally. You don't understand the hardships of someone without support. Shen Jiao may be kind, but she's no clay figure without temper. In his eyes, I was so utterly worthless. An indescribable humiliation welled up inside me. I stood up, pushing him out with all my strength, my voice hoarse. "I've never been a kind person. Is this news to you? If you love her so much, why won't you divorce me? Gu Changji, she isn't a clay figure. You want me to be one, to swallow my pride and endure? Let me tell you, don't even think about it." He towered over me. I pushed with all my strength, my face flushing crimson, yet I could barely make him stumble back 2 steps. Gu Changji let me pound him until I was utterly spent. Finally, his face darkening, he swept me into his arms and barked harshly. "How long do you intend to keep this up?" Fury must have clouded my judgment, for I raised my hand and slapped him across the face. The sharp crack echoed through the hall. Servants knelt everywhere, trembling with fear. Gu Changji's head jerked slightly to the side, yet he still held me in his arms. I felt his grip tighten and loosen, until finally, he let go with a sigh. Calm down. Acting like this, so jealous and petty, is hardly befitting the mistress of the house. How my daughter behaves is none of your business." A familiar, sharp voice cut through the air. Mother strode in, whip in hand, her presence commanding. Hundreds of household guards followed her, filling the courtyard. Without a word, she shielded me behind her, creating distance between me and Gu Changji. Gu Changji reached out, wanting to intervene, but holding back. The moment I saw Mother, tears streamed down my face like rain. I wept bitterly, all the pent-up grievances of recent days spilling out. Mother patted my back while delivering a sharp rebuke. "Since General Gu cannot fulfill his original promise, let us part amicably. Draft the divorce papers." To win my hand, Gu Changji had fasted for 3 consecutive days, climbing Mount Meng on foot to pray for blessings, all to persuade my mother to consent to our marriage. On my wedding day, he came to fetch me, kneeling in the street to make a solemn vow. Should I ever betray this trust, may I lose my beloved forever. My bones consumed and my heart scorched. His vow still rings in my ears, yet his heart has changed. Gu Changji froze for a moment, his expression turning grim. "Divorce is impossible. Ye will forever be the legitimate wife of the general's household." Mother's expression remained unmoved. She whipped him with her whip, then shoved it into my hand, snarling, "Yair, whip him." Tears blurred my vision, yet a surge of fury welled up in my chest. My arms swung back and forth, the whip lashing through the air like a phantom. I felt no fatigue, and Gu Changji's refusal to flinch only fueled my rage. The final lash struck his face, tearing away a strip of flesh. Blood flowed freely, soaking through his clothes. I froze in place. My hand went limp. The blood-stained whip fell to the ground. My love vanished like the wind, leaving no trace behind. Gu Changji's eyes glistened with tears. his body rigid. After a long silence, he struggled to speak, his lips stained with blood. "Unless I die, the only option is a divorce decree, one stipulating 3 years without bearing an heir, violating the 7th initial clause." My heart trembled. A woman sent home under such grounds would be drowned in scorn. Noticing my disbelief, he staggered back, then turned to explain to Mother in a soft, gentle voice. "Your Highness, no couple goes without quarrels. Wouldn't you agree? Threatening divorce at the slightest provocation only invites ridicule." Mother sneered, her teeth grinding audibly as she shot him a scathing look. "Very well, General Gu. How bold of you to threaten this palace." Her expression softened as she tenderly stroked my cheek. "My dear, tell your mother, do you wish to divorce?" I wiped away tears, my smile bitter. "Mother, I don't want to stay here another moment." That night, Mother produced the imperial pardon granted by the late emperor, intending to forcibly take me back to the estate. Anyone who obstructed them would be killed on the spot. Gu Changji stood his ground, blocking the carriage, letting his blood crest over without yielding an inch. I lifted the curtain, meeting his expectant gaze, and instructed Fuzhu, "Take men to inventory my dowry." And all the servants brought from the princess's residence take them all away. The curtain fell, obscuring his face, now ashen and defeated. The next day, my uncle the emperor publicly reprimanded Gu Changji in court, berating him for favoring a concubine over his wife. Shen Jiao, it turned out, wasn't even officially recognized as a concubine. Gu Changji refused to agree to a divorce, pleading with my uncle the emperor to intervene. Instead, he was beaten with 10 strokes of the cane and expelled from the palace. Had it not been for the border unrest demanding a commander, he wouldn't have escaped even 30 lashes. Meanwhile, Mother heard Shen Jiao bragging everywhere about her uniqueness and refusal to be a concubine. She immediately ordered a Suona band to march with fanfare to Yonglin Alley. Fuzhu massaged my shoulders, chattering excitedly. "Miss, you should have seen Shen Jiao's face, utterly priceless." I raised an eyebrow. Since she was venting my anger, I let Mother make a grand spectacle of it. "They say Shen Jiao shed her usual timidity," screaming fiercely, "Stop playing, all of you! Stop playing!" The matron leading the procession addressed the gathered crowd loudly. "By order of the matriarch of General Gu's household, I ask you all to bear witness today. We have come to formally take Miss Shen Jiao as a concubine for General Gu. May all present receive blessings for witnessing this." A concubine kept outside the main household, hidden from view, was destined to be the subject of gossip. As soon as she finished speaking, servants began distributing copper coins. The scene erupted into a frenzy, congratulatory shouts mingling with mocking jeers, the clamor never ceasing. Only Shen Jiao's shrill voice stood out like a discordant note. "I won't be your concubine. Gu Changji, I'm not done with you. How dare you deceive me?" After speaking, Fuzhu cautiously glanced at my expression. Her expression amused me, and I curved my lips in good humor. "Did my face bloom? You've been staring." Her mouth twisted into a high-pitched pout. Those two really got off easy. But that General Gu isn't exactly honest either. Even after getting beaten, he still lingered outside our estate, drawing all sorts of whispers. He didn't care at all about the princess's dignity. I spat out a grape seed. "What is he doing outside the mansion?" Fuzhu replied irritably. "What else could he be doing? Begging for an audience with you, seeking your forgiveness. That's what." I pondered for a moment, then instructed her to handle some matters for me. By evening, Gu Changji hurried back to the mansion. Fuzhu relayed the news indignantly. "Miss, Shen Jiao had been searching everywhere for General Gu. Upon learning he was at the princess's residence, she stormed straight over. General Gu had no choice but to bring her back to the general's residence first." I reclined comfortably on the couch. To stink bugs together only stink worse. Who cares whether he's good or bad? For half a month straight, Gu Changji was tied up with Shen Jiao and didn't show his face. Naturally, I enjoyed my freedom. The summer heat was intense, and I craved coolness, so I lingered in the pavilion every day. Seeing my laziness, Mother pleaded earnestly, "What will become of you in the future? If I'm gone, who will be your support? No, it's time to choose a husband." My ears let it in one side and out the other. I paid it no mind. Then, 2 days later, the princess's mansion hosted a lotus appreciation banquet. Under the guise of a feast, they invited numerous young masters from prominent families, all for the purpose of selecting a husband for me. "Mother, I've only just been divorced. Please don't be so ridiculous." Mother shrugged it off. "My daughter's peerless beauty makes her a prized catch even after a divorce." Where there are crowds, there's gossip. The banquet had barely begun when whispers started. "Have you heard? That concubine of General Gu is terrifying. She chased him down the street demanding some sort of explanation." "Yeah, what a disgrace to the family. Some lowly thing demanding the position of legitimate wife. Who knows what dirt they have on General Gu? He's lost all his manly pride." This crowd deliberately picked apart their flaws, clearly speaking for my mother and me to hear. But I truly hadn't imagined Shen Jiao could be so utterly lacking in manners. And Gu Changji was willing to tolerate it. It was too strange. As I pondered, the servant's announcement echoed through the hall. Unsurprisingly, it was Gu Changji. He stormed in, his face twisted with fury. Today, Mother had specifically instructed the servants, "Let him pass unhindered, no matter what." He stepped into the banquet hall at its peak, his expression heavy with anguish. The wounds on his face were still horrifying to behold, like a winding centipede that had ruined an otherwise handsome face. The moment he spoke, pain made him grimace and clench his teeth. "I.e., you're choosing a husband?" Everyone stopped eating and drinking, their ears pricked up higher than a rabbit's. I swirled my wine cup, my tone distant yet polite. "Has General Gu come to offer congratulations?" Crash! The nearest table toppled, fruit and wine spilling everywhere as guests scattered in shrieks. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. What a brute! "We haven't divorced yet. How dare you choose a husband? I.e., you can't do this to me." A grown man, his eyes red-rimmed, swaying on the verge of collapse. I couldn't help but clap. "General Gu, your acting is quite impressive. You're deeply immersed in the role. But surely the general's residence hasn't received the imperial decree?" Uninformed ladies began whispering among themselves. Mother swept the room with the princess's authority, and the murmurs gradually died down. Gu Changji looked bewildered. I hummed, tapping my own head. My memory, the imperial decree for divorce must have just left the palace. It should be arriving at the general's residence any moment now. His voice trembled, as if the very word divorce had struck him with profound shock and hurt. I met his gaze calmly, forcing him to look away in embarrassment. He still harbors a mistress within the mansion. What nerve to feign hurt! In this world, it's not only men who can divorce their wives, women can do the same. I returned every ounce of pressure he'd forced upon me that day. The next instant, a hearty laugh echoed from outside, shattering the frozen atmosphere. "Your Highness is late." I peered out the window. Prince Xiaomu of the northern frontier strode in. Though past 30, he was exceptionally well preserved, radiating an air of scholarly elegance and noble bearing. I excitedly winked at Mother. Mother, our savior has arrived." Perhaps my excitement was too much, for Mother pressed me down with a look that spoke volumes. "You haven't fallen for the northern frontier prince, have you?" I nodded, counting on my fingers as I analyzed earnestly. "Mother, look, the prince of the northern frontier excels in strength, looks, family background, and character. Gu Changji can't hold a candle to him." Mother nodded blankly. "But he's not just a little older than you." I sighed in exasperation, pointing discreetly at the prince. "Mother, if you say that, the prince of the northern frontier might get upset. You see, if you marry well, your daughter will have a lifelong protector, right? What do you think? Mother flushed uncharacteristically and scolded me softly. I told you to find a husband, and you're the one looking for one for me. I chuckled. Mother, your ears are all red. I knew it, there was something going on between them. Just like me, the capital's top gossip expert. The Prince of the Northern Frontier spent most of his time commanding troops stationed in Liangzhou and rarely returned to the capital. Over the years, he never failed to send my mother love letters. Before I was married, he reached a pace of one letter every 2 days. Countless fine steeds were worn out delivering his letters. More importantly, having adored my mother for years, he naturally extended that affection to me. He showered me with treasures without hesitation. Right now, his gaze toward me was still as gentle as a spring breeze. But when it shifted to Gu Changji, dark clouds instantly gathered overhead. General Gu, do you think I have no one to back my daughter? The mighty Prince of the North, long enthroned in his lofty position, carried an aura unlike any other. Gu Changji couldn't withstand it, crumpling in defeat. I wouldn't dare. Finally, he gave me one last deep look before hurrying away. Rumor had it he rushed to the palace gates to intercept the imperial edict. But alas, heaven does not always grant human wishes. The imperial edict had already been delivered to the general's residence. By the time he retrieved it and raced back to the princess's mansion, the banquet had ended. The gates were shut tight, barring his entry. To vent my anger, Mother had exchanged the pardon token for this decree of divorce, orchestrating this entire charade. Now the entire capital is filled with whispers about the Gu family. Yet Gu Changji seems utterly unconcerned, coming daily to guard the gates of the princess's residence, seeking only to see me once more. And that Shen Jiao, ever by his side, stands before the gates of the princess's residence. The two of them tugging and pulling, arguing incessantly. There is no dignity to be found. Rumors swirl throughout the capital, and I am utterly weary of it. Just as I was mulling over the situation, preparing to summon him in for a face-to-face talk, the Prince of the Northern Frontier stopped me. Let me go meet him. I thought he was going to reason with him. Little did I know, he grabbed a wooden stick on the spot and charged out, beating Gu Changer to a pulp. At that moment, I sat with Mother in the pavilion near the manor gate, cracking melon seeds. We listened to the wails outside while I stole glances at her expression. Then, feigning casualness, I remarked, Mother, I hear Liangzhou is quite fascinating. I wonder if I'll ever have the chance to see it in this lifetime. Mother shot me a glance, her expression unreadable, then pulled a pearl from her pouch and handed it to me. Did the Prince of Zhenbai bribe you with this? As I stared at the pearl glistening in the sunlight, I wanted to curse the Prince of Zhenbai to death. So he's rich, throwing pearls around like candy. Afraid people won't know he's loaded enough to rival a nation. But outwardly, I plastered on an awkward smile, burying my face in Mother's lap. With exaggerated flattery and a deliberately sweet voice, I whined, it's nothing really, just a few thousand pearls. I couldn't go on, I gave up. Mother, he really gave me so many. Mother crossed her arms, glaring at me. So you'd sell me out for a few pearls like this? I lowered my head, thinking hard. Mother, you misunderstand. Mainly, I want to live off you for a few more years. Before she could explode, I bolted, shouting over my shoulder. Mother, tell me, was it worth selling me? Is this patron reliable or not? At the corner, I bumped into the Prince of the Northern Frontier, who just returned home after beating someone up. He hunched over, eyes gleaming as he grabbed me. Well, does your mother want to come back to Liangzhou with me? My eyes darted around. I held up 5 fingers, flipping them back and forth, sighing with feigned distress. Lately, this hand feels a bit dry, like it's missing something. The Prince of the Northern Frontier pulled a bunch of keys from his robe and clattered them into my palm. Daughter, see what else you need. Head to Liangzhou's treasury and take it yourself. My face instantly lit up with joy. All right, father. I'll go pack my things right away. Mother received a special edict from her imperial uncle, the emperor, to leave the capital for recuperation. On the day of departure, Gu Changji waited at the city gate early. As the princess's carriage rounded the corner, I spotted him. The scar on his face had scabbed over, new flesh growing beneath, which he occasionally scratched. Spotting me, he positioned himself before the carriage, pleading for a moment to speak. Mother nodded. I remained seated, merely lifting the window curtain. Gu Changji sat astride his horse. I slightly lowered, his voice hoarse. "Ai, can you give me another chance?" I didn't answer directly, instead extending my hand. The cut on my palm, once gouged by glass, had turned pink. He looked puzzled. I met his eyes and explained patiently, "The wound on your face still hurts, doesn't it? But mine hurt 1,000 times more back then. Yet look, it's healed now, new flesh growing over it." Gu Changji, once the pain fades, let it fade. Ignoring his devastated expression, I retreated into the carriage. My gaze drifted through the window lattice toward the distance. Warm sunlight spilled down, and I would walk toward the future that belonged to me. This time, my future would no longer include him. Gu Changji's perspective. Gu Changji told Wen Wanyi he'd be back soon. In the end, he didn't return for 5 full days. Initially, he'd only intended to settle Shen Jiao before leaving. For some reason, he felt a nagging unease, as if something within him was slipping beyond his grasp. Thus, he'd wanted to return to the manor swiftly to spend more time with Wen Wanyi. Yet Shen Jiao declared she'd completed her weapon blueprint and needed to discuss some details with Gu Changji. He hesitated for only a breath before deciding to stay. Shen Jiao leaned against his arm, delicate and boneless, explaining the blueprint's structure in detail. It was the first time Gu Changji had seen a woman speak with such eloquence and confidence. His heart skipped a beat, then surged with excitement. For what she presented, if truly built and deployed on the battlefield, would be utterly unstoppable. He found himself utterly captivated. Midway through, Shen Jiao brought in the meal and a peculiar dessert, thoughtfully serving him. "General, try this. I made it myself. It's a pastry from my hometown. They call it cream cake." Gu Changji was delighted. She always had all sorts of quirky ideas to please him. Unlike Wen Wanyi, who still needed coaxing. He froze. He didn't know when it had started, but he'd begun secretly comparing the two women in his mind. Shen Jiao cut a slice and held it to his lips. Gu Changji snapped back to reality, took a bite, and tasted the sweetness. Perhaps it was the enchanting candlelight that night. Or maybe that thing called cream cake was simply too rich and sweet. He let himself mistake Shen Jiao for Wen Wanyi, unwittingly falling into a trap of sweet indulgence. It wasn't until much later that he understood. Shen Jiao had always coveted him, or perhaps the position of legitimate wife. In the general's household, his proud eye could never tolerate his indifference. But Gu Changji realized it far too late. His momentary weakness dragged on for 5 full days. Only when battle reports reached the border did he snap out of his reverie. But it was already too late. Ai had seen everything. Gu Changji hurried back to the mansion. That same feeling of panic and emptiness surged back. He kept telling himself it was fine. Ai wouldn't be angry. He just needed to coax her. Yes, whenever he upset her before. As long as he played the victim and acted cute, Wen Wanyi would surely soften. Yet, when he saw Wen Wanyi dragging her bloodied foot back to the mansion, her soul seemingly absent, Gu Changji's heart nearly shattered. She still demanded a divorce. She refused to forgive him, which meant his Ai knew everything. The pain from the whip lashing his body couldn't compare to the agony in his heart. He watched the carriage of the princess's residence grow smaller and smaller, until it was just a tiny black speck, vanishing completely into the night. Gu Changji suddenly realized that night, when he had abandoned Ai and left, How deeply disappointed and heartbroken she must have been. If only he had paid more attention then, perhaps how things wouldn't have come to this. Gu Changji endured the lashes, followed by 10 heavy blows. His body, unable to withstand the torment, occasionally began coughing up blood. The physician said it was old injuries aggravated by pent-up emotions, requiring proper rest and recuperation. Yet rumors spread throughout the capital. When Wanyi was selecting a new husband, this time she would choose someone dependable. He found it absurd. They hadn't even divorced yet. How dare she choose another husband? Gu Changji stormed over, intending to confront her, but his words turned into pleas. In that moment, a flicker of unease surfaced in his heart. Only then did he truly realize that the one he had always loved was this woman alone. Shen Jiao had been nothing but a fleeting novelty. He regretted it, desperate to hold her back. But when Wanyi said, "A woman can also divorce her husband," a wave of bitter sweetness surged up, and he fought it back fiercely. That day, he had exposed his ugliness, threatening her with divorce. This was Ai's counterattack, his just desserts. She had truly let go, even leaving the capital for Liangzhou. The last time, she told him gently, "Once the pain fades, you'll forget." From that day on, Gu Changji's health deteriorated rapidly. He began vomiting blood day and night, and his hair turned noticeably grayer. Compounding this, since Shen Jiao entered the household, the inner quarters knew no peace. She couldn't even manage the household affairs. Visitors came unattended, torn garments went unrepaired, servants grew lazy, and she preached equality, insisting no one was born to serve. She showed none of Ai's capable attentiveness. Because of her, the general's residence had become a laughingstock throughout the capital. Tormented by regret day and night, Gu Changji desperately sought to create Shen Jiao's weapon. Having already lost Wanyi, he could not afford to lose the chance to restore his family's glory. Yet an unexpected turn of events unfolded. Half a year later, the weapon was completed. During the field test to demonstrate its power, several princes were present. The shot veered off course. Gu Changji sacrificed himself to save the fourth prince, losing a leg in the blast. He could never return to the battlefield, becoming utterly useless. The fourth prince fared little better. An ear was blown off, forever barring him from the throne. Unfortunately, the fourth prince was one of His Majesty's most favored sons. The emperor flew into a rage. Shen Jiao was beheaded, pleading for Gu Changji to save her even as she died. But Gu Changji was already struggling to save himself. He was thrown into the imperial dungeons as a condemned man, chains piercing his scapulae as he endured brutal torture. In the end, the emperor spared his life due to his past military merits, stripping him only of his titles and banishing him from the capital as a commoner. This punishment was considered an extraordinary act of mercy. Half crippled, Gu Changji was a spent force, yet he forced himself to keep going, traveling over 1,000 miles for more than 2 months until he reached Liangzhou. He wanted to see that person one last time, but he never imagined that upon arriving in Liangzhou, he would encounter Wanyi's wedding. 10 miles of crimson bridal finery stretched across the sky. She wore a crimson wedding gown, yet even that vivid color couldn't obscure her radiant beauty. She smiled, gazing across the sea of people at her groom. In that moment, Gu Changji felt an odd relief at his own gaunt appearance and tattered clothes. Only like this, he thought, could Wanyi fail to recognize him. Only like this, he hoped, could she not see his ruin. He remained the spirited figure she remembered. The next instant, a soft voice sounded above him. "Fuzhu, give this beggar some wedding cakes and some money." Someone handed them over as she instructed. Gu Changji kept his head bowed low, accepting them with trembling hands. He heard himself say, "May you find true love and happiness for the rest of your days." He wasn't sure if it was his imagination. The wedding palanquin had already traveled far away. A faint sigh drifted on the wind from afar. "Take care," Gu Chang'e died outside Liangzhou City in a dilapidated temple. A group of beggars had set their sights on the wedding pastries and silver in his hands, but he clutched them tightly, refusing to let go even as he fought back blood. In the final chaos, a knife plunged into his chest. Seeing they'd killed him, the beggars stripped him bare and tossed his body into a mass grave. As his last breath left him, Gu's down snow began to fall, settling softly on his eyes and face. All that remained in Gu Changji's vision was a vast expanse of white. A figure in red approached, extending a hand toward him. It was the day of his wedding to Wen Wanyi. The woman had smiled sweetly, her eyes brimming with love. Gu Chang'e reached out to her, but his breath ceased entirely just before their touch. He had once vowed, should there be betrayal, it would consume his bones and scorch his heart. Now this was his fate. The vow had proven true. Extra chaptera, heavy snow fell on our wedding night. The next morning, my husband insisted on dragging me out to admire the plum blossoms, fearing I'd be cold. He brought a hand warmer and wrapped me in fox fur until I resembled a white bull. My silhouette nearly blended into the swirling snow. Just then, Mother hurried over, hesitating to speak. My husband said he had business and went to the study. Only then did Mother take my hand, her expression grave. Gu Chang'e is dead. I froze for a moment, then nodded calmly. Outside the window, the crimson plum blossoms still bloomed defiantly. Alas, the man himself was gone. Beyond recall, the end.